The Vibroplex bug has a bit of a bad reputation in amateur radio, primarily because those that purchase them and attempt to learn to send a good CW with them don't really quite know how to properly set them up. It's important to know that with the Vibroplex, adjustment is critical. So what we're going to do is provide you with a bit of guidance on how to properly set up a bug. Once it's set up properly, you should be able to develop the ability to send good, clean, well-balanced, readable code with a Vibroplex key. First, let's familiarize the viewer with some of the elements of the bug. A couple of key components include the damper, which is this little weight here, the pendulum, the left and right trunnion screws, of course the dot contacts and the dash contacts. The Vibroplex key is a little bit different from an electronic keyer in that the dots are made automatically, but one must make the dashes by hand, like that. So it's manipulated differently and it's also adjusted differently. The information we're going to provide is really a set of information borrowed from the Western Union Telegraph Company, the U.S. Army, and other organizations that had an interest in their operators being able to send good, clean code, either American Morse or international. So let's start by seeing how to properly adjust a Vibroplex key. First of all, what one wants to do is take the right trunnion screw, basically back off this nut here that holds it in place, and what you do is you essentially back this nut out counterclockwise until the pendulum comes to rest very gently against the damper. You don't want to push against the damper, you just want it to touch the damper. The purpose of the damper is to control any excess oscillation in the pendulum to keep it moving smoothly when the mechanical dots are being created. So again, back this particular right trunnion screw here outward until the pendulum comes to rest against the damper very gently. It should not vibrate when you bounce the table. Likewise, it should not push against the damper. Then tighten down the right trunnion screw. The next thing to do is adjust the left to right movement of the pendulum. The easiest way to do that is with one of these little devices called an automotive feeler gauge. Now, as you become more experienced in radiotelegraphy and with bugs, you won't need one of these, but for the sake of illustration, we're going to show you basically the approximate distance to set this gap here between the left trunnion screw and the pendulum. Now, the commercial telegraph companies recommended 11 to 15 thousandths of an inch. So if I take this 15 thousandths feeler gauge here, and I go ahead and I just gently push this in there and pull it forward, I've got it adjusted to about 15 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so again, this gap, when this is, the pendulum is at rest against the right trunnion screw, the gap between the pendulum, that is this lever here, and the left trunnion screw should be about 15 thousandths of an inch. This is important because when you push the lever down this way, and then bring it back to create dashes within a single character, you can't have a lot of play. Otherwise, you get an unevenly spaced components in the character. So again, pendulum resting gently against the damper, about 15 thousandths of an inch between the left trunnion screw and the lever here and the pendulum, and that sets the spacing. Likewise, you want about an equal distance between the dash contacts. So they should also be about 15 thousandths of an inch. You see I push the gauge right in there. I have just about 15 thousandths of an inch. Now it's not super critical, but you, again, don't want a lot of play. You don't want to be having to slap the bug back and forth to make a clean character that contains both dots and dashes. So that's how you set up a bug in terms of the spacing and the left to right movement of the dot and dash paddles. The next thing you want to, of course, do is adjust your dot contact. The dot contact here can basically be backed out. One can hold the pendulum down here, hold it in the dot position until it stops vibrating, then gently bring this particular dot contact forward until one hears the oscillator, or you can use an ohm meter to determine when it makes contact. Now, the length of the dots is somewhat dependent upon application. Landline telegraphy requires rather short dots. Radiotelegraphy requires a somewhat longer dot. So if I hold the dot side of the paddle down, you hear a nice clean series of dots. Okay, so you have nice clean dots. Likewise, when I push the dash paddle, I'm making just about the same movement from left to right. The other thing you want to check with the Vibroplex key is this adjustment here. Some have a screw here that holds the pendulum in a somewhat horizontal position by applying a vertical force down here. And you want to make sure this doesn't rock up and down significantly. You don't want to bind it, but likewise you don't want this rocking up and down where it's so loose that the dot contacts give you split dots. So that's sort of how you adjust the Vibroplex. If you've never used the key before, of course, it's probably worth pointing out that these weights control the speed of the dots. When the weights are down at the end of the pendulum, of course, you have slower dots. When you move it up, they speed up significantly. It's important now to talk about how one manipulates the key. Learning how to use a bug is difficult for those who have used electronic keyers. The reason for that is most operators who use an electronic keyer learn to manipulate the paddles with their fingers. However, to use a bug properly, you actually utilize a rolling motion of the wrist. So what you'll see with individuals that operate a bug is somewhat of a rolling of the forearm. For example, that gives them the necessary rhythm as well as the momentum to operate the key. A couple of additional points that are worth noting. You'll note on this Vibroplex key, the springs are way out to their lowest tension. The spring there should be just enough spring pressure to quickly return this lever here to its original position, but not so much that one has to work to manipulate the key. A good indication that you have too much tension on these springs is when the bug starts walking all over the operating table. So if it starts sliding around on your desk while you're attempting to send code, that is assuming your rubber's in pretty good shape and not rock hard from 50 or 75 years sitting in an attic. The bug really should stay put without nails, glue, staples, things of that nature. So, again, light spring tension, about 15 thousandths, perhaps down to 11 thousandths of an inch between the contacts, as well as this lever and the trunnion screw. Dots at a comfortable speed. And then again, practice just by rolling the wrist. So for example, I'll send the quick brown fox. So that's the quick brown fox in international code on the Vibroplex. So in American Morse, it might be So again, you can send perfectly good, well-balanced code with a Vibroplex key, but again, you're going to have to learn to manipulate it by rolling the wrist and kind of developing a timing with one's fingers. The best way, really, to learn how to send good code with the Vibroplex key would be to take a phone directory, for example, and practice sending names and telephone numbers. Numbers are a very good exercise with the key because many of them contain large amounts of DAs versus DITs. So, for example, So 1 through 0, for example, or in American Morse code, etc. So it was 1 through 7, but anyway, that's kind of the idea. of how to properly adjust and manipulate a Vibroplex bug. It's a bit more difficult to learn to use a bug well than it is, say, an electronic keyer, but it's a beautiful instrument to use for radiotelegraphy, and it's likely that the time invested will be well worthwhile. I hope this little video has helped some of my fellow radio amateurs develop the foundation for becoming good operators with the semi-automatic key, also known as the bug or Vibroplex. Thank you very much for your time.